All right, everybody. CGA got game with the legendary Scotty Pritchard, and we're both out of the studio. I'm in Los Angeles, and you are in Costa Rica. How's it going over there in Costa Rica?
Free agent lifestyle, looking good, feeling good. Life is good. Costa Rica's been awesome. San Jose, the capital, heading to the beach. Jaco Beach tomorrow, tearing it up. Be back in Vegas on Tuesday, but having a great time. I've always said I want to be like Coach Greg Adams when I grow up. So far, so good, man. I'm following in your footsteps, living the dream in Costa Rica.
That's what it's about, man. Living the dream. I'm in Southern California, soaking up the sun myself. And that's the free agent lifestyle. That's what we're willing to do. But look, at the same time, we still got a job to do. And we got to do our jobs. You're over there doing your job, right? You're picking picks. You're making bets. You're setting up the timeline. What are you doing over there?
Well, what's great is betting sports professionally. It provides a very good lifestyle. And I make a point every year, Greg, to get away after the football season. It was another very good season. I took third in the World Championship of Sports Betting, the Circa Invitational, by invite only. 16 of the world's best going head-to-head versus the point spread, college and pro football. But every year after football, I try to get away. So right now, a week in Costa Rica, I come back for the big game, the Super Bowl. I'm going to be at the Super Bowl, Allegiant Stadium. I know you'll be there. We'll be hanging out, telling stories and socializing. And then on the 21st of Feb, I'm heading out to a place called Thailand for 2 months. I do that every year. It'll be my 8th time in Thailand, and rest and relaxation. Excited about that as well. But yeah, Costa Rica is awesome, man. It's my 2nd time here, but I'm going to come back every year.
Well, good, man. Well, I haven't been to Costa Rica yet, so I'm going to have to get some notes from you so I can go there and enjoy my time at the JUCO, as I call it, in Costa Rica with the senoritas. I'm pretty sure that's on over there. Okay. All right. So you got Costa Rica, Thailand. We got Southern California in here, but we got a big weekend for the NFL. And you got some opinions. I got some opinions, but we're going to start off with the first game, and that's Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Right now, the Kansas City Chiefs are the dynasty. Nobody wants the Kansas City Chiefs to win. You got Taylor Swift going viral for all the wrong reasons at this particular point. AI, you got Travis Kelce on every commercial right now. Patrick Mahomes and Brittany Mahomes, everybody's annoyed by them. So everybody across the country wants to see Kansas City get dumped. Lamar Jackson is the fan favorite right now. Everybody wants to see him win the Super Bowl, and they're pulling for the Ravens. The Ravens at home. Kansas City Chiefs for the first time playing an AFC championship game on the road. The weather is not a factor. Both teams play in cold weather, but Kansas City Chief has the edge. Are they the favorite in this game?
Baltimore Ravens, home field. They do have the favorite role in this contest. They're favored by 3.5 to 4 points. Kansas City, to your point, Greg, they have now been to the AFC championship game 6 of the last 7 years. I like teams that are proven, teams that know what it's like to get there, teams that know what it's like to get to and or win the Super Bowl. The big three with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Kelce. Tough to go against proven winners at this late date. Last weekend, my money was on Buffalo and Josh Allen, but Josh Allen, again, for the upteenth time, choked the game away. I give credit where credit is due. In Kansas City, the fact is they made their halftime adjustments like they always do under the tutelage of Coach Andy Reid, and they just flat out were the better team on the road. Because that was the one I've made a lot of money, Greg, betting on the Chiefs over the past few years, especially in the playoffs and or the Super Bowl. But the fact of the matter is, this was the first game that they played Buffalo in Buffalo after Buffalo had already beat them in Kansas City. So I thought it was a great spot for Josh Allen to step up and put his money where his mouth is. But in fact, Kansas City just took it to them. But in this game, no one likes and respects Lamar Jackson more than me. In fact, my strong opinion is he's the MVP of the league. you know, because I won't let you forget. I've told everyone since September, I bet the Ravens to win the AFC at 15-1 and 11-1. So I've got a big fat payday coming. I've hedged some of it off on Kansas City because that's the smart thing to do. So no matter who wins, I win, but I hit the jackpot. I win the most as long as Baltimore holds serve. They win at home. But to your point and to your question, who do I like, and do they have the right team favored, implying that Kansas City might be favored because they're proven. But the fact of the matter is the Ravens at home proven this season, they are the favorite, 3.5 to 4 points. The value, forget my future bet. This is a 3.5 hour contract. The value in my mind, points mean more than opinions. These two teams are pretty comparable in talent. I give the Ravens a slight edge because they are at home, but I like the Chiefs plus the 4.
Oh, oh, the Chiefs plus the 4. You know, I knew you were going to do this. I knew you were going to do this. The Chiefs plus the 4. It looks so good. It's so tempting. That looks like some value money right there. I mean, that point set pretty good here. They got to win by a touchdown. The teams are close. You got Mark. You got the tight end coming back in. All right, he's cleared and ready to go. Kansas City has some problems on the offensive line. This could be a slobber knocker. I don't see a blowout, so that means Kansas City plus 4 looks good. If you want to go what's best for the money, you're saying there's no chance for a blowout, or you just hedging your bets.
There's always a chance for a blowout. The point spread is there, my friend, to present a 50-50 proposition. The odds makers, I mean, this line opened 3.5. All the money has come in on Baltimore. And I think that's, as you mentioned, Greg, has to do with the fact that the stud tight end, Andrews, is likely to play. So that's why the line has been bumped up to 4. But keep in mind, from an odds-making standpoint, the odds makers, they want to set that point spread to where they can generate, hopefully, in an ideal world. It never works out this way, but their mindset is strong. They want to create 50% of the money on Baltimore minus the points and 50% of the money on Kansas City plus the points. But as I say, points mean more than opinions. Even though the Ravens at home, I give them the edge, they have zero interest in winning by 5 points or more, whereas KC, even if they're down late, I mean, Baltimore might be playing the clock. Kansas City can always get a late backdoor touchdown and or steal the game outright. So the value was with Kansas City plus the 4 in my objective opinion. And it's hard for me to be objective because I've got a big fat payday coming as long as the Ravens just win the game. You know, there's something called the rule of 72 when you invest in the stock market. If you can double your money every 7 years by getting a 7 to 8% return on your money, you double your money every 7 years. I don't have that kind of time. I'm taking my investment from September, a few short months ago, and I'm taking it times 15. I'm taking it times 11 because I bet the Ravens. I saw the Ravens. People forget a year ago they had a commanding 4-game lead with 5 games to go when Lamar went down and they lost the division late to Cincinnati because they finished, I believe, 0-5. But I don't forget things like that, and that's why he came back knowing that the Ravens were undervalued this year. But yeah, there's always a chance. I mean, the Ravens could win by 30. It's a football game. Anything is possible. Anything can happen. But again, I'll take my chances with the Chiefs plus the 4, and who knows? Down the middle solves the riddle. If Baltimore wins by 1, 2, or 3, I win all the money. Boom, shakalaka.
You win all the money. You take home everything, and you look like a smart guy by taking the value right there at 4.5. And it could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but the earlier the better when you get your money in on that one. Like it could be at 5 tomorrow, or it could be at 3. Right. So either way, it should be a good game, man. I appreciate your information on this one. Anything else on this one before we go to the next game? Anything that we should be looking for in terms of conspiracy, anything related to the Chiefs?
No, I do think that these two teams, you don't always get this, my friend, in the playoffs because the parity is the word of the day and every day in the NFL on any given Sunday. But in this case, I really believe the top two teams in the AFC, definitely Baltimore and Kansas City. So to your point, it should be a knockdown, drag out game. Maybe a coin toss could go either way. I give the Ravens a slight edge because they are at home. But if you're going to give me Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey 4 points, I'll gladly take them. So that's all I've got on that game, my friend.
All right, excellent. And I think there was a super chat. So let me jump in here and make sure we acknowledge the people who support Henry Resilient. Said NFL commercial revenue doubles if Kansas City wins. In terms of that, we have the conspiracy theorists. We know we got to market the Super Bowl or the big game, and the referees do have a little bit, a leeway of making some close calls. I think this game is going to be close. I think maybe if Kansas City's up, Baltimore makes a run back. So, for that, these leagues do know that if they do have small market teams or teams that aren't popular, teams that don't have star players that have commercials that they can run at halftime, that it's in the league's best interest to help this team along. Do you believe any of that stuff?
In a word, hell no. It means less than nothing to me. But again, I understand that a lot of people track the NFL for entertainment purposes.
Pfizer got to get their money.
Yeah, it means nothing. It really has to do with, as a professional sports bettor, I can't be bothered with things that you're going to hear on ESPN or the average guy on the street talking about conspiracy or the fix is in or the league wants this team to win. Again, if that was the case, the Lakers would be in the NBA championship against the Knickerbockers every year, and we know the Knicks are a complete fraud, except this year, since they picked up Anunoby, I like the Knicks. They're going to climb the Eastern Conference standings. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to sports betting, there's so much fluff, so many distractions, so much entertainment. People are reaching for conspiracies, this, that, and the other. It goes in one ear and out the other. To me, 3-hour contract. What I'm concerned about is who's in the lineup, who's not in the lineup, who's at home, who's playing well, how do these two teams match up, and post a number, let me bet into it. Or I can always pass, but I do have a small opinion on the Chiefs plus the 4.
There you go. Man, I'm going to tell you as a person, and we know Scott is a sports bettor, he doesn't have time to put out all of this fluff conspiracy because it's just a distraction. For me, it creates great conversation. I'm not a bettor. I'm not a handicapper. So I'm just coming in here with conversation and show, and it's good talk. But you as a professional and people putting your big money on the line, you don't have time to think about that stuff because that could sway your opinion, like your right opinion on the numbers, thinking about stuff like conspiracies.
Well, I love this show and I love you because you're in the trenches and you have a cutting edge pulse to knowing what's being said, what's going on. And
Yep.
To me, it's entertaining. It's very entertaining, but it has less than nothing to do with what I do when I'm handicapping a game and I'm putting my hard-earned money. And I've told countless others when they talk about the colors of the logo for the Super Bowl being the same color as the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. And I said, well, if you believe that, and I know you don't, you would make a lot of money if that were the case. And if you think there are conspiracies and that the fix is in, you would make a lot of money by betting into the fix, betting into the hoax. But I bet into talent. I bet into the fact that the Ravens are seeded 1. I bet into the fact that the Niners are seeded 1 because they are the 2 best teams in football. But again, they call it gambling for a reason. It's a 3-hour contract. Anything can and oftentimes will happen. But yeah, that's why when I talk to people on the street and or in the sports book and they say these nonsensical things to me, I laugh and I just say, well, if you really believe that, how much have you bet knowing that that's the case? And of course, they don't bet anything because it's just food for thought. And To me, it's a complete waste of time. But it's why I love this show is because I have a very unique way of looking at things as a professional sports bettor for 30 plus years. And you being well-versed and being a sports guy and being a mentor and a friend to me, I love what you have to say because what you're thinking about, Greg, is what the masses are thinking, which is a bit counterintuitive to how I think, and that's why it makes for compelling content.
And it makes it so that you can see your results. Your results are posted. You're competitive, and you're almost always on the right side, even though I know what's on the pulse of the streets. The masses, many times, even though we might think we have the information, we don't have the information. And if I was to bet on conspiracies, I'd probably be hitting 33%, which means I would lose my money on a daily basis. But you, on the other hand, you're betting at a clip at 55, sometimes 60% in the NFL and the NBA, and you're almost always right. And I don't put my money where my mouth is on my NFL logo conspiracy, although I might think it's true. I'm not going to put any money on it. So you're right. I'm not putting any money on the NFL logo conspiracy, although I think we might have the 49ers and the Ravens. I might be right anyway.
Well, you might be right, but it'll be for two different reasons. I mean, I think it's going to be Baltimore and San Francisco based on those things I alluded to. But to your point, Greg, I have to tell you respectfully, of course, the average person who bets sports knows just enough to get themselves into trouble. Respectfully, they do not know what they do not know. And I say that because that used to be me 30 years ago when I was one of the world's worst sports bettors. Now I'm one of the world's best. It's just that I learned a lot. I made more mistakes than anyone else. But I always say do more of what works and eliminate what doesn't.
There you go, man. Let's get to the Detroit Lions, another fan favorite. And I got a question. The Kansas City Chiefs, I'm sorry, the Baltimore Ravens are the fan favorite. The Detroit Lions are the fan favorite right now. Is this something that has to do with the legacy franchises, the franchises that are winning, that people don't want to see these teams win? Detroit, the fans are heavy on Detroit. I don't know if the money's over there. Detroit's secondary is questionable. San Francisco has been dominant all year. They had a 3-game drought middle of the season. They've since recovered. They've been dominant. Well, they weren't that dominant against the Packers, but they won. They're at home. Detroit hasn't won a damn thing since the 1950s, even though that doesn't matter. But people are pulling for the Detroit Lions. Do the Detroit Lions have a chance against the historic favorite juggernaut, the San Francisco 49ers? Do they have a chance?
They do have a chance, but it's remote, and here's why. And I really like what you mentioned because you are 110% correct. The whole world loves Cinderella. They love a Cinderella story. They like a feel-good, rags to riches story. And this team, since 1956, they've won one playoff game going into this season, and that was in 1991. So the fact that they have a media darling for a coach who's very good with sound bites, talking about controlled fury. It's like, does this dude have a staff of writers coming up with this BS nonsense? It's like, dude, maybe you should work on your math skills instead of coming up with controlled fury. Oh, I'm so scared. Get over yourself. Are you kidding me? This guy Campbell is a clown. He doesn't know how to coach. I've never been a fan of a grown man crying on national TV. He's always getting emotional. It's like he's an attention whore.
Damn.
Okay? Get back to X's and O's. You don't want me to hold back, do you? Want to know how I really feel?
Let me know how he's not wearing his heart on his sleeve. He's not a player's coach. He's an attention whore. Wow, man. All right, tell us how you really feel. Tell us how you really feel.
Well, not to mention that against the Dallas Cowboys, I understand you're an inferior team. You're the dog. And there's a rule of thought that if you are on the road, you go for the win. If you're at home, you go for the tie. So if you want to go for 2 and shock the Dallas Cowboys, fine. But when you are penalized back to the 7 to 7.5 yard line and you still decide to go for it, that's a low percentage, high risk, low reward opportunity. Now, the problem is he's been a riverboat gambler. He has gotten away with it. Staley for the Chargers is a poor man's version of Dan Campbell, and we know what happened to Staley. He got shit canned, and for good reason. But because Dan Campbell is so liked by the players, I will give him credit where credit is due. The players play hard for Campbell. But I even have a problem with that because professional athletes and players should be playing hard regardless who your coach is. So that should be a given. The players like him, just like the Raiders players like Pierce, even though he has less coaching experience than me. And again, I don't coach football. So I'm not a big fan of players' coaches. I like guys that are stoic. I love guys like Andy Reid that just go, Parcells and Mike Tomlin. This guy, 17 years consecutively without a losing season. Are you kidding me? The epitome of continuity and consistency. Give me Mike Tomlin every day of the week, twice on Sunday over the likes of a fraud like Dan Campbell, who is consistent and he gets away with it. That's the crazy part. But you're not going to get away with it against Shanahan because Shanahan knows that he's up to shenanigans. He knows that he's going to fake a punt. He's going to go for it on 4th and 35 from his own 10 because that's what Campbell does. Now, he's been uncannily lucky. And as a professional sports bettor, I don't believe in luck. Luck, L-U-C-K, laboring, L-U, under, C, correct, K, knowledge. Laboring under correct knowledge. The harder I work, the luckier I am. Luck is the residue of design, but this guy does things off the cuff because he's ruled by his emotions. Unlike you, me, and my fellow man, ruled by logic, he's ruled by his emotions, and I can prove it. A grown man during a press conference crying, how would you like to go to war with this guy? Are you kidding me?
You know, you bring up an interesting point that 2 interesting points. Dan Campbell, lucky. Staley for the Chargers, unlucky going forward, going for 2, fake punting, and he gets fired. So there is something to be said about maybe the percentages working. The Chargers coach, former Chargers coach, analytics guy, and he would go for it based on what the card said. Dan Campbell goes on it on emotions, and he's a little luckier, and then he gets more credit for being the gutsy guy. Although I will say that going for 2, getting bumped back and keep going for it, I thought that was crazy. All right, I don't mind going for it the first time, but going for it 2 times because you're emotional about getting the 2 actually put yourself in a detrimental situation long term. But another point, you're saying players, coaches, Antonio Pierce, the players are behind him, and you're saying Dan Campbell, the players are behind him. But the NFL pro shouldn't be playing for the coach. They should be playing for themselves, championships, money. They shouldn't be looking for players, coaches. You don't think the coach like the former Raider coach, which was I always forget his name, and I'm forever get his name because he was
Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, I'm gonna forget his name. I don't care about that. All right. So he was definitely not a player's coach, and he definitely disrespected the players. You don't think there's something to be said for a professional if you compare Josh McDaniels, who was arrogant and didn't care about the players, versus a coach that has inexperience and is not analytical, not a whiz kid, and he cares about the players? You don't think that makes a difference in professional sports?
Well, there's something to your point, Greg, but let me just back up for a second because I'm not going to give your Raiders a free pass. Josh McDaniels was a bad head coach for the Raiders. He was a bad head coach for the Denver Broncos, but most of the Raider players couldn't hold his jockstrap. This guy and his staff, they've won countless Super Bowls, okay? So they've won more Super Bowls than all of the players collectively combined as a unit. So we have to give this guy, and it's not popular for me to say this, but Jimmy cracked corn, and I don't care. I still don't like players, coaches. I like coaches that win. I like players that are playing for themselves because they're professionals. They got to be professional athletes because they are the best of the best of the best. 7 billion plus people on this planet, and your worst NFL player is an absolute stud. So these are gifted athletes, and I just love the sport. I love the camaraderie and fellowship. Professional athletes. You're talking NBA basketball, roughly 330 NBA players, and 10 to 15 get a shot to make it every year, because once you're in, you're in. And you still have to have that cutting edge mentality to maintain, because the young buck is always coming up trying to knock you out of your position. So professional athletes have my utmost respect. But when you're talking about players, coaches, popular, it's not a homecoming king contest. It's not a popularity contest. It's about winning. And that's where oftentimes you have to get there before you can actually win it, meaning Shanahan for the Niners. The difference between him and Campbell, night and day when it comes to coaching. Now, in the other bracket with Harbaugh for the Ravens and Reed for the Chiefs, these two guys are two heavyweights. Dan Campbell is the weak stick between these final four coaches. But again, it's a football game. Anything can happen. But if everything plays out the way I think it will, based on talent, it's going to be the Ravens and it's going to be the Niners. I wouldn't be surprised if there is an upset. It would be Kansas City. But the value, I bet numbers and value more than I bet teams. That's why my money's on KC, but I hope Baltimore wins. I'm hoping for a down the middle solves the riddle. You talk about how popular the Lions are, and they are popular because the fans like to see Cinderella. Again, that doesn't mean anything to me. Just show me the money. I'm going to bet my game, and I'm going to see the cashier. To heck with Dan Campbell and the overrated, overhyped. The Lions are not the second best team in the NFC. The Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles are both better than them, but they got knocked off based on the P word, parity, on any given Sunday.
Interesting there. Just to follow up on another point there, I often thought that players at a certain level the coach should not be responsible for their motivation. The games on the schedule, many times, even with college athletes, you're getting a scholarship, you're getting exposure, you're pretty much a professional, you're getting some sort of compensation for what's going on. I understand there's adverse situations, there's learning how to adapt on the road, but motivating from the coach's perspective doesn't seem like that should come from the coach on a consistent basis, meaning that the coach is a cheerleader. And people boil down players, coaches to pretty much being a cheerleader and giving motivational and rah-rah speeches. And I've often thought as a coach, even as a young coach, that shouldn't come from the coach at a certain level. I can understand when you're learning as a young youth athlete and maybe a high school coach. At the lower level high schools like JV and Froshoff, maybe you might have to motivate some kids who don't understand things. But at the college level, for certain, at the varsity high school level, and certainly at the professional level, the whole rah-rah cheerleader coach thing, I think, is somewhat overrated. And a lot of people get credit for being sideline antics, right? Clapping and jumping up and down and yelling and passionately screaming as if that's going to make a difference. When I always say it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Johnny and Joes. So your Johnny and Joe's got to be out there, be willing to perform on a daily basis on back-to-back nights or as you travel on the road. They got to understand that. And I do understand your point about Dan Campbell and the rah-rah player coaches. I think that's overrated for the most part, because if you look at championship coaches, most of them are not rah-rah coaches. They're not coaches that are patting players on the back and making them feel good. You know, that's all great, but those aren't the coaches that are winning. Like, they might win, they might get far, but they're not the ones that are consistently winning. That's just my opinion on that. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. Stoicism. I'll take a stoic coach a la Bill Belichick. We're talking about the guy getting a bum rap because he's had a couple of bad years. This guy's a living legend. 6 Super Bowl wins in 24 years. And the hapless, helpless, pathetic Atlanta Falcons had a chance to hire this guy, and they passed. Are you kidding me? Did they forget 28-3 in the Super Bowl? I haven't forgot. You won't let me forget. I had the Falcons +3 looking good. I already spent that money, by the way. I'm up 28-3 in the third quarter. I'm getting +3 points. There it is. Just when I was starting to forget about it, you won't let me forget, and for good reason. But the fact is, Shanahan was a big problem as the offensive coordinator. overrated piece of crap QB. Matt Ryan was just as bad with his bonehead decisions, throwing a 3rd and 9 pass, 2.5 yards, and then 35 guys tackled the guy because he's a stat whore. So yeah, I think that but all the more reason why guys like Shanahan, they've figured it out, they've learned, but I want to get back to Belichick. So the Atlanta Falcons organization, which is a joke with the capital J to begin with, you interview Parcells and then you pass. Who are you going to find better than Belichick to coach your team? Forget the past 2 years. The guy's a living legend, and he's stoic. I love Andy Reid, stoic. These are guys you can get behind and go to war with, unlike the Siriannis of the world, unlike the Dan Campbells of the world, a la the Joel Embiids of the world. I said it. Professional flopper, Joel Embiid. As much as I dislike Joel Embiid, I love Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard made a grown man cry. Yeah, Joel Embiid with elephant tears coming down his face like a junior high school girl. I loved it.
Yeah, that wasn't a good look. And Embiid is definitely got some other things going on. We're going to get to the NBA here in a second. I do want to acknowledge Jeff, the producer. Thank you for the contribution right there. All right, I don't have my sound effects, but I appreciate you and Henry Resilient kicking in for, maybe a little bit of a margarita while you're out there in Costa Rica with the señoritas and a margarita. You get a margarita tonight. That's what you get for your performance today. Let's get it moving on, because you want to talk about the NBA. You want to talk about the NBA. Now, people are already going to say you were going in hard on the Detroit Lions coach, but let's talk about Doc Rivers being hired by the Milwaukee Bucks. He's set to make his debut on Monday. Not so mid-season replacement for a championship team and a first-year coach. This is almost unheard of that they replace a first-year coach about 43 games into the first season. He didn't get a chance to prove himself. I don't know what happened down there. Maybe you know. I know you're a fan of Doc Rivers. I just can feel it right now. I mean, you're just oozing right now saying this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread for the Milwaukee Bucks, that they got a professional championship coach like Doc Rivers to come in and lead this team to the promised land. I know that's what you're going to say. So go ahead and say it.
And you would be 110% wrong. I'm sure Doc Rivers is a great, great guy. All indications are he's a great person. He's an honorable person. I like Doc Rivers, but not as a coach. As a coach, this guy came into the league in 1999 or 2000 to take over the worst team in basketball. But because Doc Rivers was a good player and he was a pretty good broadcaster, not today, but back then, he was a pretty darn good broadcaster, and I enjoyed listening to him. But he took over a hapless, helpless, pathetic, underachieving Orlando Magic team that they were the worst in basketball. They had some major injuries. They got their players back. Doc steps in, and because he was in the media, guess who votes for Coach of the Year? It's his co-workers, the media, the same people who voted for the Giants in the NFL to be the Coach of the Year, thanks to the New York press a year ago. They were the third best team in their division, only beating out the Washington Commanders, and yet Sirianni for the Eagles had the best record in football in the same division, and he doesn't take first at the Coach of the Year. So when you're dealing with, that's why I love sporting events, because whoever wins. But when you have these awards, Coach of the Year, it's a joke. Right. George Karl for the Denver Nuggets, always overrated. Seattle Supersonics, no one had more talent than they did in the early 90s. Karl couldn't win if he saw the final score of a game. And so you look at Doc Rivers. I want to get back on point with Doc, because this guy came into the league, and because they got healthy the year he stepped in, they were the worst. And they still didn't do anything. They only won 20-some games. Like, that's something to be proud of. He got Coach of the Year, but here are the facts. You're not going to hear this on ESPN, but you're going to hear it on your show, because I'm here. And I'm going to give it to you straight.
Oh, here we go.
Tracy McGrady was on Doc Rivers' team. Tracy McGrady was a man amongst boys, and yet under Doc Rivers' tutelage, They lost not 5, not 10, not 15, not 20, 22 games in a row. Doc never won anything. And then he inherited and got the first super team with Kevin Garnett,
They won a championship.
Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. And they won one championship. They should have won 3. So he had the first super team and only won one NBA championship. He's had talent everywhere he's gone because of that one super team, right? But only won one NBA title, right? When they outmanned everybody that they played. Doc has never been an X's and O's coach because he's never been a coach. He was a media guy. He was a player. So he just was in the right place at the right time, and he caught a break, lightning in a bottle. But then he goes to LA with CP3, Blake Griffin, back when Blake Griffin was the man. They had so much talent, and they were favored to win. And I can prove that Doc is not an X's and O's coach because during the course of the regular season, George Karl and Doc Rivers, you can just throw the ball out there, but you're playing a team, the opposition, that's playing their 4th road game in 5 nights. It's a one and done. So you can rack up the regular season wins, but when you get in a 7-game series, you actually have to do what you're paid for, which is coach. And it's about in-series, in-game adjustments that Doc doesn't do.
He doesn't do
I can prove it. No coach in the history of basketball has ever blown more 3-1 leads. Well, I give him credit for being up 3-1, but then he gets outcoached, outmanned, game in, game out. It's not easy to blow a 3-1 lead consistently when you're the better team, and yet he holds the record for doing so. Then, after the Clippers, finally, he overstayed his welcome with Hall of Famers Kawhi Leonard and PG-13 and others, lost to the Denver Nuggets up 3-1 when the Nuggets were just young and up. They were just now starting to come on, right? And yet the Clippers were at the top of the pinnacle, and they did the right thing, finally firing him. Then what? He gets to go and coach Embiid and Harden and Maxey, the MVP of the league, and you still can't get to and win the Eastern Conference Finals. So now you get fired again. It's like, what took you so long? The problem with the Bucks, Giannis. Giannis is a great player, one of my favorite players, because he brings energy and effort. But Giannis thinks he's a coach. He thinks he's a GM. The problem is Giannis wanted Dame. Dame doesn't play defense. Lillard doesn't play defense. You got rid of Holiday, and you gave up a ton of your future picks to get Lillard. It's a bad fix. To give up Holiday, you didn't win squat before Holiday got there. Holiday gets there, you win a championship, and then you blow him off. You let him go, and you sign Lillard. Holiday's a better three-point shooter. He shoots a higher percentage from 3 than Lillard, and Holiday actually is a team player, and he plays defense. Giannis, I have to call him out. Last year, as a number 1 seed, they lost to a number 8 seed, the Miami Heat, and the reporter allowed Giannis to intimidate him because he said, hey, was this season a failure? And Giannis made the mistake of saying, failure. Michael Jordan won 6 NBA championships. So when they didn't win the championship, was he a failure? No, because Michael Jordan never lost to a number 8 seed as a number 1 seed. So it's a terrible, terrible comparison. I can't believe the reporter let him get away with it. Giannis is a great player. I love the guy, but I detest him when he tries to play coach. So why would the Milwaukee Bucks, Adrian Griffin, they had the 2nd best record in the Eastern Conference, and I said it was a bad trade. Giannis was behind the trade. Giannis was behind this, and Giannis was behind Griffin getting fired. And now you bring in Doc Rivers. Okay, everyone feels great. Kumbaya. Doc Rivers, everyone loves Doc Rivers. Well, you're not committed to winning if Doc Rivers is your coach. He's proven it.
Now, let me play devil's advocate for Doc Rivers, because when he was with the Clippers, I lived in SoCal with the Big Three, and I was pulling for the Clippers. They were loaded. They were ready to go. They were favorites up against 3-1 against the Golden State Warriors, who were kind of an upstart team themselves. But Chris Paul, legendary injuries right at the end of the season or in the playoffs. You also had Blake Griffin, who would be injured often as well. So you had that. Also, Doc Rivers did inherit the big three mid-season. If I'm not mistaken, they won that championship mid-season. He did not have them for the full season when he won that first championship, because the next year they played the Lakers in the playoffs and they lost. All right. So he really hasn't been an adjustment coach, but he has had injuries. He did have a not so strong Philadelphia team. Anybody that thought that team was good with James Harden, you're delusional. You're delusional. James Harden is never not a championship guy, although we're gonna get to the Clippers here in a minute. But Doc Rivers, in my opinion, had a bad stretch with the Clippers. But injuries are a part of the game. It is what it is. Looking at it, you're saying that trade with Drew Holiday, which I agreed. I thought the Celtics would be the favorite at the beginning of the year. I thought Drew Holiday was the better player. I thought the Celtics got the better of that deal. But this is going to be a disappointment. What do they do with Doc at the end of the season when they get knocked out again in the first round? What do they do with Doc? And I think you're frozen. So you might have to log back in on the internet. Let me go ahead and take you down real quick and put myself up. He's out there frozen. Let me get to the super chat. Oh, the super chat was a question for Scotty P. But let me just finish up with Doc Rivers. All right. Doc Rivers, to me, is, again, he is known to not make adjustments. All right. We got Scotty P back. All right. I was saying on Doc Rivers, if you know from the inside, from what I hear, he's not an X and O guy. All right. He's kind of like a rah-rah player. He was a, tough defensive player when he played for the Atlanta Hawks as a youngster. But he's not an X and O, guys. He's not an adjustment guy. Why does this hire make sense for the Milwaukee Bucks? You're saying it was Giannis, maybe to protect his brother, right? That's the rumor. His brother's on the team. His brother's not a strong player. He's a waste of a roster spot. Okay. It's Doc the scapegoat potentially for Milwaukee's basic shortcomings.
It just tells me that you make one bad decision and it snowballs. It compounds. I was not a fan of Budenholzer. Budenholzer should have been fired. Now, people are saying they should have never fired him, but the fact is he would have been fired before had Kevin Durant, if his shoe size was a half an inch longer, 14 and a half as opposed to 14, because his toe was on the line in that overtime Game 7 loss to the team that the Milwaukee Bucks, who ultimately won the NBA championship. Budenholzer, again, underachieved, but Griffin was not given a fair shot. Again, it's going to take some time, but second best record in the East behind the Boston Celtics. You're right there. And then you change it up because Giannis didn't like Adrian Griffin, and for some reason he gave up Holiday. There's no way they're going to trade for Lillard without Giannis's blessing. And there's no way they're going to bring in Doc Rivers. Do you think Doc Rivers would be hired if Giannis was against it? Let me ask you something. Do you think the Lakers would hire Ty Lue when he interviewed for the job if LeBron says, I want Ty Lue as my coach? No. So I don't want to hear LeBron James praising Ty Lue now. I don't want to hear it, because you had your chance to have Ty Lue as your coach and the Lakers passed. And that's when he went down the hallway and got dialed in with the LA Clippers. Ty Lue's a good coach, not a great coach, overrated big time. He won one NBA championship, but that's only because Draymond Green kicked LeBron in the groin up 3-1 and got suspended. So Ty Lue's a good coach, not a great coach. So when you look at Giannis, he's playing GM. And he's a great basketball player. He's not a GM. He's not a coach. And this Milwaukee Bucks team is a complete fraud with a capital F. And it just got worse. And I love it, because I'll just continue to bet against this overhyped, overrated team. Last night, perfect example, taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. They lose straight up by 9 or 10 points.
And people have to remember, Giannis, they had to keep him in Milwaukee, right? He was at the end of his contract. It was time to renew. So I think maybe this is part of the agreement that he gets a little more player consideration on things. He gets more decision making. Maybe things have to go through him And otherwise, he would have bounced. And I think winning that championship, it could have been a fluke. It could have been a fluke. Like, they were a good team, like you're saying. Kevin Durant's Nets team had him on the ropes in that one game. I remember that game that you finally, where his foot was on the line. So they could have been easily been bounced and never been a championship team. And then Giannis moves to a stronger market team to market himself. But Milwaukee, they win a championship. Milwaukee signs him long term, and Giannis is like, okay, I get to make power moves. At this point, his power moves have all been, at this point, bad decisions.
Bad decisions. They've underachieved. And I don't like the fact that Giannis doesn't hold himself accountable. Instead, he browbeats a reporter for saying that, oh, yeah, well, was the season a failure because the number 1 seed, the Bucks, lose to a number 8 seed? And then he brings up Michael Jordan. It's like, that's not right. Michael Jordan and the Bulls, I'm tired of hearing about LeBron James in Game 7, what his record is. Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, they don't even know what a Game 7 is. They never, no team in 6 NBA championships even forced a Game 7 against the Bulls. So LeBron, stop self-promoting as the GOAT. Michael Jordan never told anybody, I'm a pretty good basketball player. He never told anybody I'm the GOAT. He let his play speak for itself. So again, Michael Jordan, greatest player of all time. End of story. It starts and stops with Jordan. LeBron, get over yourself.
Yeah, that's going to be another conversation. We got to have that conversation. That's going to make for a great video. McGinnis says, question for my guest. Well, he's not a guest. This is our show. Right? This is our show. And we're going to name it. And I got some ideas for you. We do have some ideas. We've been bouncing back and forth behind the screen. But he says, should the Bills fire their coach and move in a different direction? Or was the offensive coordinator move enough? Okay, so somebody had to take the blame, and they fired the offensive coordinator. And he says, great show. Thank you for that. Bills Mafia. The Buffalo Bills coach was on the ropes for making some comments that, weren't politically correct. But was it his fault that the Bills are underachieving? Remember, the Bills have never won a Super Bowl, and they've been to 5, and they've choked on many a playoff games. Wide right, wide left. All right, Thurman Thomas can't find his damn helmet. 4 Super Bowl losses in a row. I mean, what more can you say about the Buffalo Bills? I mean, these fans passionate enough. They ain't winning. You're not going to win. Rich Stadium is dead. All right, but anyway, no, I'm pissed off the Bills fans. Do you think they should have got rid of the coach based on the performance of this team, maybe underachieving?
First of all, we encourage feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. So I really respect the viewer who stepped up and had a great question. I have to tell you that, no, the Bills should not fire their coach because you cannot fire Josh Allen. The Bills were right there, okay? The fact is, their offensive coordinator did a great job the last 7-8 games of the regular season. The Bills had won. They came back from the dead. There was a 5% chance this team was going to make the playoffs with only 8 weeks to go in the season. Not only did they make the playoffs by winning 7 of 8, 7 of those wins were against playoff teams. They were flat out the best team in the NFL, the hottest team, and they catapulted from no man's land, outside looking in, to a number 2 seed. Remember, only 1 team gets there from each conference. That means 14 teams are not. So there's no shame. It's not like they got beat 30-7. The fact is, Josh Allen missed a wide open receiver in the end zone and another wide receiver underneath for the first down. So it's on Josh Allen. It's not on the coach. There comes a time when players have to play. And I give the Chiefs all the credit in the world. My money was on Buffalo. You cannot win if you're afraid to lose. I'm absolutely fearless. And I don't care if Actually, I do care. It's more painful losing by a half a point than it is losing by 50. 50 is like, okay, I made a bad call. Next, but a half point, it's like, man, was there a half point out there that I missed? But to your point, to the viewer's question, which is a great question, no, they should not fire the coach. And the Bills were right there. They came out of nowhere. They had a great season. They just came up short late, and it was because of Josh Allen. And he's the one that needs to be held accountable, but you cannot fire your franchise quarterback.
Can't find it. Yep. So coaches are always going to be the first to go. And if it's not the head coach, it's going to be one of the coordinators or an assistant coach. If the head coach survives, it's going to be an assistant coach almost always. With that being said, what about this high scoring in the NBA? Luka Doncic, I can't say it, just scored the 4th highest individual total in NBA history. Not only that, Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid turning in 70 and 72. My goodness. And you also had a couple 68-point games. I can't remember who scored these, but in the last few weeks, you had 4 players almost compete for top 10 individual scoring of all time. What do you think about that?
Well, there's no defense. There's no defense being played. I'll give credit where credit's due. Congrats to these guys. I'm not gonna show any love to Cat Karl Anthony Towns. He was really going hard at the point of selfishly losing the game to pad his stats. So not much respect for Cat. Yeah, he got 70 points. Yeah, they lost to the Charlotte Hornets. Okay.
Corey Booker. I said Devin Booker. Devin Booker scored 68 in a loss.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about Karl Anthony Towns because I'm not a big fan, because in not only the one game where he did score 70, I kind of rolled my eyes when I saw it, because I've seen him pad his stats in losses. Okay. They lost to the Charlotte Hornets 128-125 as he was trying to selfishly pad his stats. So that just doesn't gel. Doncic is an amazing player. He's always in the top 5 for MVP of the league. But let us not forget the Atlanta Hawks have never been accused of playing defense. This team, you talk about a team that's fraudulent. You have so much talent on this team. So it's not the coaches, because they keep hiring. And I like Nate McMillan. They keep hiring and firing coaches. It's on Trae Young and the makeup of this team. They play matador defense. They score 143 points and lose.
Almost always. So I always see you betting over with the Atlanta Hawks. Because they're going to score a lot of points. But they're like the 1980s Denver Nuggets, where they're going to run the score up and not play a damn second of defense, and they're gonna let you shoot the ball in the first 7 seconds and then go full Loyola Marymount coach. I can't remember his name, but Atlanta doesn't play defense, so you're gonna score 70-something points.
Yeah, in fact, it's funny you mentioned the Nuggets from the 80s and 90s with Fat Lever and Alex English, and it was the run and gun, high altitude, thin air, distinct home court advantage. But yeah, the Indiana Pacers are the highest scoring team in basketball, so they just flat out try to outscore you. I don't want to take anything away from Doncic, because he is a phenomenal offensive player, but another guy who doesn't play defense. But now, as I'm talking about this, the top 4 players in the NBA aren't even from America. You look at Jokic, you look at Doncic, you look at Giannis, who's from Greece, and then you look at Embiid, okay? So the National Basketball Association, I mean, that's what's great, man. We didn't have international players decades ago, but now we truly have the world's best of the best of the best, and I don't think anyone understands how talented and how good these NBA players are, man. I marvel at the talent. So yeah, but scoring is definitely up, to your point. So you don't even have to know why. Just play the over, Red Rover. When in doubt, get on the over until the odds makers catch up.
Yep. And one more point about some of these players scoring a lot. I've seen videos of mostly younger content creators saying that these are the best players ever in the NBA history in terms of talent. And this is because they reference scoring, they reference their ability to get a bucket. Do you agree with that? Do you think that this total comprise NBA players right now, talent-wise, are better, physically better, stronger, they can score better, they have better skills? I mean, I've seen Dr. J. I remember Dr. J, he couldn't dribble with his left hand to save his life, right? But now you got players today, they can handle the ball with both hands, most likely. They don't play any defense, though. Do you think today's players, as a cumulative, are better than players from the 90s, 80s, and the 2000s, and the 20 teens.
I could not agree more. They're better today than they've ever been. And I'm a big Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, these players from the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. But as a society, we continue to evolve. More people on the planet today than ever before, 7 billion plus and counting. The players are better today because you have to be not only a great shooter, mid-range free throw shooter, you have to be a three-point shooter, and you have to be versatile enough to play defense on the perimeter. That's why I don't like the Minnesota T-Wolves come postseason, because they play with two bigs, Cat and Rudy Gobert. Well, Gobert is a rim protector. All the Clippers and all these other teams, the Clippers already do it with Jokic, is they exploit him on pick and rolls when they go small. Jokic is the man. But defensively, he can be had. He's slow of foot. And then you look at Gobert, he's like a fish out of water trying to guard the perimeter. OKC, they're legit. Clippers, the best in the West, they're going to challenge and perhaps knock off the defending champs, Denver Nuggets.
And before we get to the Clippers, I look at maybe one argument that can be said about the past players that are different than today's players. As you said, they're more versatile. They can step out, and B can shoot the three as a big man. Not many players play with their back to the basket. And seems like, you can have a guard that can rebound just as good as a big, at 6'8", can rebound just as good as a player at 7'2". So there's not a big necessity for a big, a back to the basket player that plays on the block. Now, with that being said, the past teams seem to have team built, right? They had role players. Today, you might have four players that are just as good, that are similar, that you don't have much team building. You have star packing. So you just basically just get the best players and pack them onto one team, and then you have a lot of scorers like Cam, what's his name? Cam Moore's from the Nets. The guy can fill up a bucket.
Cam Thomas, yeah.
Cam Thomas, sorry. I'm bad with names. Cam Thomas, he could put the ball in the hoop, but is he a star? Is he a great player? Is he probably more talented than people in the past? Yes. But is he recognizable? Is he marketed? Is he can you market him? Is he going to win a championship? Is he going to be in the playoffs? Not necessarily. So what will be better? Having this great amount of talent where people are pretty much the same parity wise, or building teams where you can say, I got an enforcer, a rebounder, I got a guy that can play defense on the perimeter, and I got a guy that I can build my offense around instead of this isolation one-on-one. What do you think is better?
Great perceptive question. I think it comes down to one word, the word, versatility. So I know just a couple of years ago, Nick Nurse with the Toronto Raptors, every player was 6'9" and interchangeable. Their top five guys outside of Fred VanVleet, 6'7" to 6'9", long, right? Wing defenders, they all could knock down the three. They all were interchangeable. So your first eight guys outside of Fred VanVleet were all 6'7" to 6'9". They were long. They could defend the wing, and they could all knock down the three, and they could switch on D. So I just think Nick Nurse is a great coach, and you're seeing that as soon as Doc Rivers was shit-canned by the Philadelphia 76ers, Nick Nurse comes in, and they're right there, man. This team is talented. And Nick Nurse hit the ground running with his phonetic pace, the fact that he stresses defense, and the players have bought in. So Nick Nurse is a great coach. But to your question, it's more about versatility. It's not about role players. And if it was about role players, PJ Tucker for the Clippers and Bones Highland for the Clippers would not be the 14th and 15th guys on the bench.
There you go. Makes sense. I mean, it's just a different game now. And I'm glad you brought up the Raptors, and they got a lot of players that can play. They long, athletic, and that's what coaches are looking for today. And we're going to wrap it up with the Clippers right now. Take a look at this right here. The Clippers were, I believe, a few weeks ago, 8-9. They were in the playoff game hunt. All of a sudden, they're the hottest team in the NBA, winning 8 out of 2, 4-game winning streak. But they were pretty much probably, they probably won their last probably 15 games, 15 out of 17 or something like that, 15 out of 18. They're hot. Right now, the Oklahoma City Thunders are the only other team that are as hot in the Western Conference. The Lakers sitting in at 9 playing game. You got the defending champions Nuggets right underneath it. Is this good playoff position for the Clippers, and can they last and stay healthy?
It absolutely will last. They're only going to get better. Harden is only going to get more into playing shape. They're going to get more familiar with each other. They're doing this without their man in the middle, Zubats. So they are 20-2 in their last 22 games when Kawhi has played. The challenge is tonight, the second night of a back-to-back. They're in Boston to take on the Celtics. I would be surprised if the Clippers win, but I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did, because they are on fire right now. But they're playing without their starting center, and yet they've gone 20-2 in their last 22 games when Kawhi plays. They are the hottest team in basketball since December 1. The good news for them, it's early. OKC, I respect. They're going to be there in the end. Denver, proven defending champs, they're going to be there in the end. If the Clippers can somehow, some way steal the number 1 seed with home court advantage, they're 19-4 at home. The challenge right now is they played a few less road games than OKC and Denver, so they have some ground to make up, but they're right there knocking on the door. Minnesota, feel good story. They're a complete fraud, and we'll see it when the playoffs begin.
All right, you said Minnesota is soft. Don't just go ahead and count them out. But the West is deep. You got OKC coming along here. SGA, he was named an All-Star over Steph Curry. All right, over Steph Curry, All-Star starter, I should say. So SGA and that team, Oklahoma City, they seem for real. But it's just packed too tight in the West. I mean, LeBron, you always have to worry about him because they were a play-in team, and they, I believe, went to the Western Conference Final. Was that last year or the year before? So they can make a run. They're kind of built for the playoffs, if you will, if they can stay healthy. So you got to always respect them, even though they're way behind. And Sacramento Kings, they had a good year last year. I think they were number 1 or number 2 or something like that. So, I mean, the West is a little just too deep. Even with that, you think the Clippers can outlast all these guys?
I do believe that, first of all, the Lakers LeBron is a year older, not a year better. And I'm tired of LeBron bragging about the play-in tournament. Congrats. You went back to the way that you always play, turning it on, turning it off. I give him credit because he does play every night, but he doesn't play hard every night. Because after they won the meaningless in-season tournament against the Indiana Pacers, neither one of these teams will be anywhere near the NBA Finals in June, which is what everyone else is playing for. LeBron and the Lakers, 3-10. They started out after they won. So it was important to LeBron to win that meaningless tournament. It's not important to him, apparently, to win regular season games. AD, soft. Not a big fan of AD. I like LeBron because he's an old man, but he doesn't take games off. He plays. Now, he does take games off within the games. I've never seen him bust tail and get back on defense after he turns the ball over. But, you've been in the league for 20-some years. I guess he's earned that right. Doncic does the same thing, and that's unacceptable. He's a young pup, and for him to be lazy on defense, that is unacceptable. But, yeah, the Lakers, forget them. The Kings, I love their coach, Mike Brown, but last year was the time to be on the Kings, not this year. The Denver Nuggets, from a sports betting standpoint, last year was the time to be on them, not this year. You want to be on OKC, you want to be on the Clippers, and during the regular season, if you want to fall in love with Cat and Anthony Edwards, who's overrated for sure. I know the media loves him, the next MJ. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
He's not the next MJ, but
that's what I've heard reporters say this.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. He's a great player, though. I mean, he's a great player. He makes great plays, but I've never heard of him being the next MJ. That's ridiculous. But people don't know about Michael Jordan. You have to remember, people didn't see Michael Jordan play. So he's an enigma, even though he has more highlights. His highlights he's doing things that it seems that players today can do with relative ease. Because let's trust me, I've had Gen Z, I have a son, and he looks at Michael Jordan highlights and Magic Johnson highlights like it's nothing. They're like, that's not that big of a deal. So you're getting that, but they're also missing the context, which is important about players, which is dangerous to say Anthony Edwards could be MJ, because MJ and Kobe, game time, when you were watching the game and they was on the line, they had the ball, you had fear in your heart. Now, these other players, LeBron and even Anthony Edwards, you don't know what the hell LeBron's going to do at the end of the game. He's going to pass it with a second and a half left. Anthony Edwards is just not ever going to be competitive at this particular point to be building a team around. So these comparisons are dangerous to me, because it shows that people don't understand in context. Jordan and Kobe are far superior in game time than their highlights, right? These highlights are great, but can you be a dangerous assassin during game times? And Anthony Edwards is not that guy.
I agree with you as far as Anthony Edwards being a great talent. He's gifted, he's athletic, and he's continued to improve each and every year he's been in the league. But I always look at how do players and teams and coaches perform in the last 3 minutes of a game. Edwards, this guy bricked not one, not two, but 3 free throws to potentially tie and or win the game. Now, the third one he missed intentionally, but you're the leader of the team. You're the face of the franchise. So, and again, I look at championships. Jordan and the Bulls, 6 appearances, 6 titles, and they weren't even favored against the Lakers, and they weren't even favored against Portland. So when you talk about the Bills, the fact that they're 0-4 in Super Bowls, they were a dog in every one of those games, except the game I went to. Actually, I went to 3 of those 4 Super Bowls, but they were a favorite against the Giants. But again, that was great coaching by Parcells. Ball control, keeping Thurman Thomas and the Bills on the sidelines, going back to coaching. But yeah, as far as the Minnesota T-Wolves and Anthony Edwards, I'm not sold on his commitment, because again, Cat, his own player, calls him out for his terrible eating habits. So right now, you're young, you're gifted, loaded up on testosterone, you can get away with it. But his decision-making late in games, I'm not a big fan of. Rudy Gobert, yeah, he's a good rim protector, but if any team goes small, and if you have a decent coach that is good with X's and O's, you can exploit that Minnesota team.
There you go. We got a couple supporters here. Jaime Torres came in with the super sticker. Appreciate that. That's another margarita for you down in Margaritaville. And we got our brother Arthur Jones here supporting the football fund. Y'all have a good weekend. And with that being said, everybody have a good weekend. We got some games coming up here tomorrow. And enjoy yourself. Be safe. And then get ready for the Super Bowl. So we will have a show maybe on Monday. I got a personal thing going on. We might have to wrap up the next day. But I know, when do you leave Costa Rica? You coming back Monday or Tuesday?
I get back to Vegas on Tuesday. I'm leaving Costa Rica Tuesday morning, heading to the beach tomorrow all day and night. And yeah, Costa Rica is great. I highly recommend it. My second time here.
Okay, we'll get the wrap-up show at some particular point. We'll get it in. If we miss it, we miss it. But we got it going on. Thank you for the viewers for tuning in, and subscribe to the channel. Me and Scotty P are out of here. Peace.